Hello and welcome to Patriot Thinkology. This channel has three main goals in its existence. The first goal is to track the history of the Christian church from all the way from Jesus up until the current day. I want to know why the church made the choices it did, how they got there, what the historical documents are, and everything like that. The second goal is to show the relevance of the Bible to everyday life. I feel like that's kind of gone to the wayside these days. And the third is to enter into a bit of historical gossip per se. So by historical gossip, I mean things that may not be related to actual biblical topics necessarily. For example, we could be talking about the Bible and the boat that Peter's using to sail along as he goes on his mission trip, stuff like that. Because I love history in general, and I feel like I can't have this channel without having me bring a bit of my gossipy history knowledge into it as well. So, why am I starting this channel? Just for you guys out there. Well, it's those three goals, but the reason behind those goals goes a lot deeper, and it comes from the Bible itself. If you look for wisdom, you will find it. It's said all throughout the book of Proverbs. Now, the problem is, more recently, I've realized that there's a huge difference in how people apply the gospel. There are many different churches out there, and I don't know why. And when I don't know why, it frustrates me, and it continues to frustrate me until I find answers. And honestly, I didn't really want to start this channel. I've actually tried to start it, I think, 4 times now, and I've just had no time to do it justice, and also just no time to move forward with it. So now I don't have a job currently. So number one, I really need you guys to subscribe if you want to hear this information. And number 2, watch my videos. But that's a side point. I need to take extreme ownership of actually digging down because I've got the time now. I have no excuse. I need to take extreme ownership. I have this book, fantastic book by Jocko Wilkins. And I'm probably butchering their names. It's Jocko Wilkin and Leif Bevan. Fantastic book. Basically, how the Navy SEALs take responsibility for their actions. And I think as Christians, we need to take responsibility for what we believe. When you take responsibility for what you believe, it means that you dive in and you actually understand why you believe it, why we have churches the way they are, why we don't go to a different type of denomination or a different type of church, why we do communion the way we do, why we don't. And knowing why doesn't just mean going and asking your pastor why. It means going through history and understanding the decisions that gave your pastor the information to make that decision. Because a lot of times what I've realized, mainly due to the book Decoding Nicaea and the book by, I think it's Eric Metaxas on Martin Luther. It's back there on the shelf somewhere. And those 2 books pointed out that the church we see today is not the church that was in the past. The church denominations are completely different in how they acted as to how they act today, and there's been a lot of various influences upon the church in general. And we all know that knowledge is power. If you read The Art of War, which I highly recommend, this short little book is all about understanding your enemy and understanding your enemy's plans. Now, according to the Bible, our enemy is the devil, and he occupies earth. So everything he does will be deception, deceitful, stuff like that. But how do you possibly see through deception? Well, the only way to see through deception that I've found in the Bible is using the sword of truth. Now, I thought about this for a while. Why is it not the sword of faith? Because a lot of Christians, we focus on faith. You have to have faith in Jesus, faith in everything. Well, you need truth first so that you can have faith. Because if what you put faith in, for example, you could put faith that the desert is full of snow, and you could wear your Arctic gear out in the desert, that wouldn't be true, so you would probably sweat to death really quick and die. So your faith doesn't necessarily mean that what you have faith in is true. So that's why we have the sword of truth. We're determining what is true. And in order to find what's true, you have to study history and go back in time to know the actual sources. So when I'm talking about going back and finding the historical documents, I mean, let's go back and read the original guys that came right after the disciples. If I can find a letter from Peter to Corinthians, then I want to find the manuscripts in Corinth that they were writing down how they were applying what Peter wrote. I want to find the writings from Matthew. I want to find everything that I can find from the original Christians in the first 100 years. Because Decoding Nicaea, even, this book starts well after that. The Nicene Convention was, I think it was 300 years or 400 years after Christ. So there's still a ton of gaps. There's probably like 4 or 5 generations in there that happened just between the Nicene Creed and the actual foundation of the church. So I want to know, exactly the 3 things I stated at the beginning of this. Number 1, how did the church get to where it is over the last 2,000 years from Christ until current? Number 2, what are the relevance of the Bible to everyday life? And number 3, just how does all this make sense in the general history of things? How were they able to sail? How were they able to transport? How were wars performed? A little bit of historical gossip there. If you want to hear any of this, please be sure to subscribe to my channel. This will do 2 things. It'll hold me accountable to uploads, and it'll also allow you guys to ask questions that you think are relevant and give me resources so I can continue this quest, because I can't do this alone. There is a lot of information out there. Some of it I don't even have the money to buy. I wanted to buy the original copies of, the pre-Nicene Fathers and the post-Nicene Fathers. Those are $500 for a set. So I've got to really pick and choose what I buy and don't buy. So by subscribing, you guys are helping to actually fund this adventure without having any cost go to you guys. But I don't know exactly how to proceed with this. We're just going to go 1 week at a time and see where we end up. And I'm going to start studying the books I have, because I have some writings from Martin Luther now. So we might have to skip around a little bit in history depending on what books I can find at my local thrift stores and what writings are actually I'm able to read from the original authors. So I've got a lot of info right now on Martin Luther in my possession that I can read through that are his writings and commentaries on him. So maybe that's a good spot to start. I also have the Coding Nicaea, and the Bible itself, which pretty much covers the first 33 years there of Christianity. So, subscribe if you want to hear all this, because it's going to be an adventure. And I'll see all of you in the next episode. Signing out.